Hi, welcome back to the channel. Mike at Northwest School of Fly Fishing, the old fish hobo. And what I got for you today is a seminar I did a year or so ago on winter fly fishing. It's 6 parts, 6 different videos that we put all into one video so that you're not chasing down all the other volumes on this. So it can be quite lengthy, but it's broken down 1 through 6. And my hope is for guys out there that are new to fly fishing, have been doing it only a few years, hopefully it'll brighten the light on how we do a little fly fishing in the winter. And for those skilled hobos like me out there, hopefully you'll pick up a few nuggets here and there and make it worth your while. So if you like this video and others that do like this, please subscribe. It's going to help me do more videos like this for you in the future. And so sit back, enjoy the video, and hopefully I'll see you on the river. Now tonight's seminar is, I'm really kind of interactive, so we need to stop me at any time with any questions. So if you got anything burning in your brain, just raise your hand, we'll get it right out like that. Without further ado, I want to welcome you all to Northwest School of Fly Fishing, winter fly fishing. It's winter. We want to catch fish. It doesn't matter where you're fishing. Everything you're going to learn tonight will pertain to whichever body of water you're on. So a lot of people think of winter fly fishing as being very hard to do. Don't know what fly to use, what are these fish doing, and get there, it's cold. Well, on the contrary, winter fly fishing is the easiest fly fishing that you can do. It's easy. That means you can catch fish. However, it's the hardest fly fishing you'll do. What I mean by that, it's winter. You got to dress like the Michelin tire man. You got layers, you got gloves, you got mittens, your ice is icing up on your guides. If your feet get wet, if any of you have done any winter fishing, when your feet get wet or dry, when your feet get cold, there's no warming them up. You have everything going against you. It's hard to fly fish in the winter, but it's the easiest kind of fishing you can do, as oxymoronic as that sounds. So my favorite time to fly fish is the winter. I love to fly fish in the winter. I don't have any competition. I can go to the great rivers of the West and be the only one fly fishing on the river. I'm seeing it right now. Our rivers don't have half the anglers they had weeks ago. What did we get? A time change. The temperatures are still the same, but we got a so it's getting better and easier for me to get on these favorite spots. The Wahi River in Oregon. Now that river can get clogged up like cordwood with anglers. As soon as it gets cold, you got the whole river to yourselves. So there's a lot of really good reasons to go winter fly fishing. However, where we fail in winter fly fishing is we're not prepared. We're not prepared. Only 2 things catch fish. I don't care if it's the spring, fall, winter, or summer. Only 2 things catch fish. That's the fly rod and the fly. Usually we fail with the fly. So you're going to go winter fly fishing and you don't catch any fish, it's because you didn't have the fly. We are winter fly fishing right now in the fall. I'm getting lots of reports now. I know one guy went down to the Highway 21 bridge and took 15 trout on midges. The next day, another guy comes in and says, I caught 12 trout. I go, where? At the Highway 21 bridge. Where? Right where that guy was standing. Caught him on midges. Young man comes into the school today and said he's been fly fishing for the last 3 days on the Boise River here in town, and I haven't caught anything. So you have this conflicting thing about winter fly fishing. So what I want to do tonight is to kind of step you through that. And we have a nice little video that we want to show you to kind of give you an idea. So the first thing we got to do is understand winter. We have short days here. And as we start talking about the trout, that really matters. Our short days mean it's cold. It gets colder. To give you an idea, I was on the North Fork of the Payette River. I don't know if you got those emails or videos. I was on the North Fork of the Payette River catching tons and tons of trout. Time change, there's no sun in that canyon. The temperature dropped down to 12 degrees in that canyon. The water temperatures went way down to nothing, and the fishing just slowed down to a snail's crawl. Now we have those conditions during winter, and the issue here is that the sun governs trout. So as we go into winter and our days get shorter, that time frame for trout is right there. During the summer, it's what? It doesn't get dark till 10. The days are huge, and the hatches are many. We have to understand these concepts before we get to the river. The water temperatures can turn a trout on by just 2 degrees. As soon as the water temperatures go down, it affects the trout. We have these things going against us. We have short days and water temperatures. And as I was on the North Fork of Payette, I put my hand underwater and it was like ice. I'd been up there the week before in shorts. I'd seen where the river carved bowls into the granite over the eons. These bowls were rock solid with ice. I mean, these are things we're dealing with in winter. Also, the water levels shrink down, especially here at the river here in town. When we're dealing with these irrigated rivers, they just shrink all the way down. And that's going to compress the trout, and you have to now find them. So we have to understand a little bit about weather and how it affects the trout. Trout are affected by weather. They're affected by sunlight. They get hibernetic. I don't know if that's even a real word. Sort of like grizzly bears, okay? Grizzly bears, they go, in a cave and they sleep all winter. Well, trout are very much like that in the sense that their metabolism slows way down. Their need for food slows way down. So their activity slows way down. However, it just takes a few degrees water temperature, and these fish are popping back up again. So short days, water temperatures, water levels are keys that we have to remember before we hit the water. Second thing we need to really think about to make us comfortable is what we're wearing. And everybody that I know of does it differently. I mean, when I fly fish in the winter, I don't wear gloves. I've tried wearing gloves. They just bother me. Some anglers use fingerless gloves. Well, what's the point? That's my point. What I find that works really good for me is these like quarterback, high school and college quarterbacks. They wear these things you put your hands in. Buy yourself a pair of those. What you do is you crush up a couple of hand warmers, and 2 of them, and you put them in there. And sometimes I'll just put my rod right here and put my hands in there because I can warm my hands up. I can't warm my feet up. That's the best system. If you like to wear gloves, they go right in there. So you could fish all day and keep your hands warm. And when those hand warmers get a little out of hand, you just crack a couple more. They're only $1. And you keep your hands warm all day. You can't fish without your hands. You can't tie knots. You can't cast. You need your hands. Sometimes I have a hand in there, one hand in there, until this hand gets cold. And then I just change rods. Now this hand's casting. So I keep my hands warm that way. Certainly wool socks. If you're going to wear wool socks, you got to wear a liner. You want to wear a thin liner and put your wool socks over that. Keep your feet warm that way. There's nothing fancy. Don't buy the socks with the batteries. Keep your feet dry and your feet will stay warm. Where your feet get cold is when you do this and don't move in ice cold frigid water. Once your feet get cold, you're done. Now you're uncomfortable. And the whole point of this is you want to stay comfortable. Wool caps for your head. Those are something that you got to need. I like to buy the wool caps that has the visor on them, so I can wear my sunglasses. Binoculars. It's important that I have a pair of binoculars. I want to see, I'm actively hunting fish. So a small pair of binoculars is what I use. Sometimes I don't have to get out to the river and walk down, out of my truck and go down to the river to see what the fish are doing. I can stand from my truck and look with my binoculars, and it saves me from having to walk up and down. I don't take the binoculars down the river. And then Vaseline. I need Vaseline for my guides because water gets on your fly line and it's going to clog your guides, so you can't cast anymore. There are some brands that you can get on Amazon that specifically they use for this. I just use Vaseline. There's a silicone-based thing they use. It's good for your line anyway, oil. And that'll help keep your guides. It's certainly easier to break off the ice. I was struggling the other day. I couldn't get the 2 daggum tops. I had to have my hand on them to warm them up in order to break those off. So we want to be prepared with how we dress, and then we want to be prepared before we get to the river on what it is we're trying to do on the river, and keeping those circumstances such as water depth, how cold the water is, and the time of day we're there. Now, these fish are governed by the sun, or lack thereof. We know that they're hibernetic, so their metabolism slows way down. But we know they're going to be active when there's a few degrees changes. So the logic of this is, when's probably the best time to go midge fishing? Top of the day. Now, everything in fly fishing, you're going to find exceptions to. I can remember it was 15 degrees on the South Fork of the Boise River, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and I drove up to a spot, got out, and there's 20 fish rising on it. So you find those exceptions too. But you certainly want to focus your time to that peak hour of the time, because you're going to get the water temperatures up. And water temperature is important because it creates the insect activity. There was a guy that came in here one day, and he's fishing on the Boise River, and I go, "Where are you fishing?" He goes, "I'm fishing on the island." I go, "Where on the island?" "Well, I'm on the South Channel." "Oh, okay." South Channel. He goes, "Well, I'm over there by the bridge." "Oh, okay." And then he comes in the next week, and "Where are you fishing?" "Same spot, same spot, same spot." And I said to him, "I fish that area a lot. Whereabouts are you?" He goes, "Well, you're not going to tell anybody, are you?" "I won't tell anybody." So what he told me made sense. If you know, on Eagle Island there's a water reclamation plant there, and the water's released there back into the river at 60 degrees. So just down from that raw water, downstream from that water reclamation point, the water's at 50 degrees. At the bridge, it's at 34 degrees. So where do you think this guy's fishing? Yeah, he's fishing up in that warmer water. Those fish have actually moved up towards that reclamation. And as you get there, your feet don't get so cold. Those fish are governed by water temperature. And all of a sudden you start seeing bugs on the water. Water temperature is really, really important. So we really want to time ourselves so that we're in the top of the day. So typically I like to get there start around 11, and I'll go till that sun starts getting down, and I'm done. So our days are short, our fishing is short. So economy of time is a concept where you only have X amount of hours on the river. I've got 4 hours to fly fish. Economy of time dictates to you that you spend all that time fly fishing on the most productive parts of the river. If you are fishing where there's no fish, you are burning your time. So economy of time dictates that you spend your time fishing the most productive sections of whatever river you're fishing, starting with the time of day. So if you're going to fish for 3 hours, make sure that it's right there at that time period. Okay, any questions so far? Yes.
Is there any relationship to outside temperature to water temperature that we can sit in our comfort of our home and say it's going to be 40 degrees today, so the water temperature is going to be?
Well, yes, that's a good point, because outside temperatures will freeze the water. You can't fly fish when the water's iced over. So typically, I've been fishing 15 degrees and the water temperature is 35. So it's not the same temperature.
You check the water temperature,
Yes,
and you like to be right around 35 degrees?
I like the sun. I already know the water's cold.
So
It's a good question.
What kind of temperature are you looking for then?
I think the coldest I've been is 10 degrees.
But I mean the water temperature. What kind
Usually it's right in that 32, 30,
That's okay.
right in that 30-degree weather. Yeah. It's rarely above 34, 35 degrees in the heat of winter.
So I just want to make sure I understand the concept. The concept is that you're looking for the increase in temperature on the sunny day.
Yes,
And so it's not really an absolute temperature, you're looking for a relative temperature
Exactly.
increase on the sun.
Exactly.
So if, from the
we just,
weather.
what we're looking for, Cameron, is to raise the water temperature a degree or two.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
And then, so you're looking for a sunny day as opposed to a sunny day would tend to be better than an overcast day.
Scientifically, yes, but there's exceptions to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can get a nice warm day. You know, you can get a nice warm winter day if you have
Yeah,
a
holds
good
the heat
covering.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
holds the heat in. Yeah, and that'll change the water temperature.
Okay.
So those clear sunny days can be frigid here.
Yeah.
But what we're looking for is water temperature. That's a good question. Good question.
So today, probably the water temperature would have gone up a couple of degrees.
Yeah,
We had that 40-some degree weather about
right.
2 or 3 o'clock.
I'd say, you know, depending on where you are in the river, how shallow it is, you know.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember this, what kind of river you're fishing will also tell you a little bit more too. Certainly if you're up in the mountains, the water is really cold, really cold. We get down here in these tailwater rivers, it comes out of the dam at 50 degrees. So your typical tailwater, when it's punched out of a dam, you know, it's at 50 degrees. By the time it gets down to us, it's got colder. So it can be a little different. Each reservoir is a little different. And the 3 reservoirs we fish here, Lucky Peak, Anderson Ranch, and the Wahoo Reservoir, they're all deep reservoirs. And that water comes out in the summertime really cold. Well, in the wintertime, that would be really warm. And it has a direct reflect on what fish eat during the winter. So, we talk about what fish eat. Well, it directly relates about how you fly fish. So, I said earlier that it's easy to fly fish in the winter. And that's why I like to do it. It's easy. Well, here's why it's easy. One of the oldest concepts in fly fishing is how do you catch a trout with a fly or dry fly? How do you catch a trout with a dry fly? Well, you only have to figure out 3 things. One, you have to see a fish rising. So when you see a fish rising, that's key. So when we're on the Boise River or the Wahoo River or the South Fork Boise River, and we're walking along the river and we see a bloop, or we see a bloop, 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 what does that tell us? It tells us there's a trout right there. Right there. And what did that trout just eat? An aquatic insect. Beautiful. Step 1, see fish rising. See fish rising. It tells us there's a trout right there, and it just ate an aquatic insect. What do 98% of what a trout eats are? Aquatic insects. Number two, figure out what that insect is. So we saw a trout rise, that's 1. Number 2 was we have to figure out what that trout just ate. And number 3, give it to him. It's a 300-year-old equation. Came over with the Brits. We do exactly the same thing in winter fly fishing. But the cool thing is, and this is why it's easy, is when we look at what trout eat, we know that trout eat aquatic insects. There's basically 4 aquatic insects they eat. Right, Tim? 4. They eat mayflies, They eat caddisflies, they eat stoneflies, and they eat midges. So a mayfly is a beautiful upright butterfly, a caddisfly looks like a moth, stonefly looks something like a prehistoric creature, and a midge looks like a mosquito. It's from the same order. A midge and a mosquito are cousins. They're brothers from another mother. A mosquito lands on me here and a midge lands on me there. I can't tell the difference. What's the difference between a mosquito and a midge? They're from the same order Diphthera. What's the difference? This is going to be key to your winter fly fishing. Number one, mosquito larvae need oxygen to survive. So back in the day, back when Steve was, back in the 40s, didn't we put oil on the water, Steve? To kill all the skeeters? We don't do that now. And the oil would cut off the oxygen supply, all the mosquitoes would die. A mosquito will bite you. And a mosquito has a season, usually late spring all the way through summer, and then they're gone. A midge, which looks like a mosquito, number one, does not bite you. Its larva does not need oxygen. It burrows into the mud. And number three, the most important thing, it doesn't have a season. A midge will emerge 365 days a year. A mayfly has a season. A caddisfly has a season. A stonefly has a season, usually April through November. So in January, if you see a bloop, what do you think that caused that? A trout, right? What was that trout doing? Eating an aquatic insect. What was that aquatic insect? Midge. How hard is that? So we look at the equation of how to catch fish on a dry fly. It's three things: see fish rising, figure out what they're eating, and give it to them, right? So in the winter, when I see a fish rising, it can only be eating what? A midge. When I go fly fishing in the wintertime, I only have one box, midges. That's simple. In the wintertime, in the summertime, in the season, when you see a fish rise, who knows what it ate? So of the three, see fish rising, figure out what they're eating, and give it to them. What's the easiest? See them, right? It's easy. What do you think's the hardest? Figuring out what they just ate. But not in the winter. It's easy. So the key to successful dry fly fishing in the winter is three things. See fish rising. Figure out what they're eating and give it to them. Well, they can only be eating what? A midge. How hard is that? So, Mitch.
So let's say you don't see any fish rising, does that mean they're just eating emergers?
There's no, question is, what if I don't see any fish rising in the winter? Well, we don't have a midge hatch. Yeah. We'll talk about that in a second, Mitch. Yeah, there's no midge hatch. So, when I'm winter fly fishing, speaking for myself, when I go winter fly fishing, I'll give the warning, I'll say to my wife, I'm gonna go out to the river for a few hours and do a little fly fishing. When I come home, she'll say, how's the fishing, Mike? And I'll say, I don't know, I didn't go. I didn't fish. She'll say, oh. A couple days later, I said, I'm gonna go down the river and do some fishing. She'll say, okay, when you coming back? Oh, I'll be back around dark. And I come in, she goes, how's the fishing? I don't know, I didn't get wet. She goes, okay. And then Saturday, I'll say, I'm gonna go down the river and do a little fishing. She says, okay. I come home, she goes, how's the fishing? Man, the fishing was incredible. I caught, X amount of fish. What's the difference between these 3 days? Well, 2 of those days, I didn't even get wet. I'm hunting trout. Why? Because when I find them, I'm going to catch them all. Why? Because I know what they're eating. I know what they're eating. Only two things catch fish, the fly rod and the fly, okay? I'm a good caster, but by God, I have thousands of midge patterns. I'm not going to be denied. Well, you will fail is you don't have those midges that those fish want, both in quantity, size, and color. That's where most anglers fail, is in their lack of flies. I was talking to a friend of mine, Tim Allen, down on just a couple days ago. Tim's using size 30 midges. Size 30. He has to wear these 150 power big lights sometimes, and that's a quote. And he's the only one catching fish. Well, my point is not that he's using small flies. He has the fly. See where I'm going with this? So winter fishing can be really, really easy. I usually take a big 24-cup Stanley thermos with me and a pair of binoculars, and I hunt fish. What I don't do is drive to the local river, find a good spot, get my gear on, and wade out in the water. And do what? Nip fish, right? What am I doing? I'm just getting cold. So for an hour, I'm standing in a spot and moving, and how many fish have I caught? None. Or I can be standing up with a cup of coffee. I don't see any fish right. And I go to the next spot. I don't see any fish right. Then I go to the next spot. I don't see any fish right. And then I run into Norm, and we have a conversation. He hasn't seen any fish right. I go to another spot, 2 hours into my 3-hour find, and I go around the corner, get out, and there they are. I see 5 fish riding. What does that tell you? It tells you a couple things. It tells you, one, there's fish there, and they're eating midges, right? Well, that's 5 fish times what? Probably about 10. There's 50 fish in there. Now I put my waders on. What am I working on here? The equation. See fish rising, figure out what they're eating, give it to them. I know what they're eating. What am I looking for? Rising fish. So instead of me spending an hour and a half, 2 hours, staring at and getting cold, I'm moving up and down the river looking for those feeding fish at that optimum time of the day. Now, if you look at my story, there's a couple of days where I don't see any fish rising. And I'm not fishing. However, we can fish. We can fish when there's no fish rising. We nymph fish. What do we nymph fish with? Midges. Okay, so I pose this question. Todd, our cameraman, today caught a 20-inch brown trout. I saw the picture. On a what, Todd?
Size 18 midge.
Nymphing a midge. This morning when I drove to work, the temperature was 29 degrees. It got up to what, 49, something like that today? So you can be extremely successful nymphing. And it's certainly not cold enough where you're going to get your feet frozen. So when I say we're winter fishing right now, we're winter fishing right now. How are we nymphing? Guy comes in today, he says, hey, I'm not doing very good. And I go, what flies are you using? Well, I'm using a size 14 this and a size 16 that, size 14 this, size something like. I go, oh, okay. These midges here. Here's where I'm going with this. See, during the course of the summer, these aquatic insects, these mayflies, these things that we imitate to catch fish, they're reproducing. And what are they doing? They're laying eggs, right? Well, they don't lay an egg that big.
No.
They're microscopic eggs. A nymph will molt, crawl out of its skin, 25, 26, 27 times over the course of the season before they reach that size. They're small in the rivers in the wintertime. If you're going to nymph fish, make sure you're nymphing with a size 18. That makes more sense than a chunky old piece of metal popping down the road down the river with a bead on it. Now, I have a couple midge boxes, probably 1,000 different midges. This is a lifetime of tying flies. Right? I don't have a single midge pattern. And we're going to show you some videos of this. I don't have a single midge pattern with a bead head on it. Zero. So we have a midge with a bead. Looks something like this. It's called a midge pupa. And then I have a midge pupa without a bead. Okay, we have a bead. Do you see it? We have a bead and we have no bead. It's the same thing. One has a nickel bead on it or a gold bead on it. If I put that in the river, where's it going? For the fish. Don't buy midges beads. What about this one? This has no bead. If I want that in the bottom, put a split shot on it. Where will it go? On the bottom. If I want it in the surface film where the fish are rising, I can use it for both. This I can't put in the film. When you see fish rising in the winter, they're eating in the film. So 98% of what a trout eats are aquatic insects. The only aquatic insect that's emerging in the winter are what? Midges. What you have lots of midges. Certainly midges without beads. If you have midges with beads, you're nymphing with those. You're on the bottom. If you have a non-bead, you can use that in the surface or on the bottom. It's multi-purpose. It's one of those oxymoronic things in fly fishing I could never figure out. Ever seen a midge with a silver head? Or a gold head or a red head? No, they sink to the bottom. Now that's fine when you're nymphing them, but it's not okay. It's multi-purpose. Now I have a four-wheel drive, massive Jeep, all-terrain. This sucker will go anywhere. It'll ride on the toughest, meanest backcountry roads anywhere in Idaho. And I can also go 90 miles an hour down the freeway. I'm not taking my little tiny box car, 2.1 liter engine, Chinese, and that's dirt road. So this is that car. That's my four-wheeler. It can do both. Now we have to sell beaded midges here because people want to buy them. But we certainly have more, probably 1 bead to 10 non-beads here. So in your box, you should have 2 types of midges, and you should have 2 types of midges. You should have a dry fly midge, and you should have the midge emerger. Some people will say pupa. Well, the pupa is on the bottom and it's at the surface. When it's at the surface, it's now an emerger, midge emerger. So as I write you and I talk to you via email, I'm saying on the river you need to fish midge emergers. If I start talking pupas and larvas and things like that, it makes you confused. If I say emerger, everybody knows at the surface. Okay, so we've made some clearly defined situations here. We know what fish eat in the wintertime. They eat midges, right? We know midges are important because they hatch every single day, 365 days of the year. We know that we have to have that. In order to fulfill the equation to catching fish successfully in the river, we have to see fish rising, figure out what they're eating, and give it to them. We know that if we're patient and we hunt fish, we'll catch them all. So that's my attitude. When I see fish rising, I'm catching them all. I can't get down there. I'm excited. It's just a matter of me coming up with the right midge they're eating. That's where a seine comes in hand. A seine. We can take a net. We can seine. I have a mitten that's like mesh. I'll just hold it out in the river. Some guys will have these big ones, and they'll just hold it out there, and they'll raise it up, and they'll see what these fish are eating, and then they'll match it. Whitefish Ed Dunn, He carries an aquarium scene he sticks in his pocket. And we do that for a reason. Instead of wondering, you can actually find out. Or you can ask a friend who's successful there, what'd you catch all those fish on? I was using this little size 22 zebra midge. There you go. So let's take a look at what a midge is. And I want to put this video on for you. Here we go. This video, I want to give credit here. It's called Bugs of the Underworld, and it's by Ralph and Lisa Cutter. It's one of the best videos on the market in terms of etymology, and we're going to borrow this for your benefit from them. Bugs of the, and we're talking about the midge.
Midges are the most common and diverse aquatic insects in the world. They occupy habitats ranging from sewage ponds to brine pools to pristine alpine lakes. Their numbers can range into the tens of thousands per square meter, and in many waters their forage value is the only reason trout can exist. Midges are frequently mistaken for their close relative, the mosquito. Midge larvae spend most of their lives in burrows where they are hidden from fishes and video cameras. From time to time, the larvae venture from their refuge, and the weak swimmers are highly vulnerable to predation. After a life of eating muck, the larva transforms into a pupa. Following a brief period of metamorphosis, the pupa breaks free of its burrow and heads for the surface. A fine layer of gas fills the cuticle, which aids the pupa in ascending the water column and gives it a bright, sparkling effect. The rubbery film created by the surface tension can present a lethal barrier to the midge pupa. While a few pupa break through by beating themselves against the film, most anchor their posterior to the film and lever their heads through the water skin. The characteristic U-shape of the levering pupa is ignored by the traditional midge patterns and is likely the reason they so frequently fail to attract selective trout. Once the pupa succeeds in penetrating the film, the tube-like cuticle acts as a port between the two worlds and allows the winged adult to escape the watery realm. After mating, the female midge skitters across the water, allowing surface tension to scrape the fertilized eggs from the tip of her abdomen. The eggs quickly hatch, and a new generation of midge larvae is born.
To kind of give you a better idea of, by the hundreds, coming right at you. Just, that's probably, that video was probably shot in a pond. And, but it gives you a general idea of what you're trying to imitate with your midges. You're not trying to imitate the adult pattern. You're trying to imitate the pupa, the emerger. Let's be clear on the emerger. An emerger is an aquatic insect that leaves the bottom of the river to swim to the surface to become a winged adult. An An emerger is an aquatic insect that leaves the bottom of the river to swim to the surface to become a winged adult. What you're seeing on that video is a pupa, but that's really an emerger. It's emerging. What do you think the fish are eating? Are they eating adult? They're eating those emergers. Why? Because they're trapped into the surface. They're trapped. That's the meniscus. They're right there. Just right there, coming right at these fish, by the hundreds. They rarely will eat the adult. What they said on the video is a midge has a complete metamorphosis. What does that mean? That means when it breaks the surface film, it's done. It just flies away. It just flies away. So what do you see during a midge hatch sometimes can confuse you, because you're seeing fish rising, but I can't see what they're eating. I don't see any adults on the water. Well, if you're in the middle of winter, that's probably a good idea. They're eating midges. In the early fall and mid-fall, and even in the beginning winter, we have a blooming olive hatch, which is a mayfly. That has an incomplete metamorphosis. What does that mean? When they hatch, they have to float on the water. It's easy to identify that's a blooming olive hatch. So you can't confuse the two. Midges will congregate along the shores. They clump up. There are little rocks and things. They're really easy to identify. So understanding a little bit about this midge pattern. Now, when we talked earlier, before the video, we talked about understanding what these fish are eating. Well, you know they're eating midges, but you got to figure out what type of midge they're eating, and that takes experimentation on your part. It's called the progression. It's a fancy fly fishing term for trial and error. In order to have trial and error, you got to have flies. Let me try this. They look like they're really small. Let me try a size 20. No. We're not using multiple flies. We're doing one after the other until we find that fly that works. They don't want that. Let me try size 22. Ah, there we go. Now you're catching them one after the other. We can do different types of emergers, meaning it can be half in the water and half out of the water. So it would look like something like this. So we know a normal midge is going to be right here. What's a hatcher is when it's half out of the water and half in the water. We have patterns that replicate that. We have those. You're trying one thing after another. We don't need to do combinations. What we're trying to do is find out what these fish are eating. Maybe they're a different color. You're guessing. You've got to have the flies to do that. Typically, for your benefit, what really works well here in Idaho is a zebra midge, or a mercury midge, or a black midge. And usually in size 18s, 20s, and 22s. That usually will cover most. Fish aren't that bright. And that'll usually cover what you saw. That you saw in a pond. And that's a cryonomid, and they're about that big. But what we get are really small in winters. I mean, in our winter water, they're really small.
What's a chironomid then?
Is a midge in the lake. Yeah.
Most of the zebra midge patterns have beads though?
No. It's amazing. Do most of the zebra midge patterns have beads? You know, if you go on the internet, they all have beads. If you go over to a box store and they all have beads. It's hard to find zebra midge. When we have, here at Northwest School of Fly Fishing, we have real tyers here. We don't have offshore flies here, so we have real anglers tying flies. And I make sure that they tie all their zebra midges with no beads, so that you have that dual purpose. You're now able to sink that, or you're able to put that in the surface. But it's hard to find those sometimes, isn't it? I was over at Sportsman's Warehouse the other day, and I couldn't find an unbeaded.
Almost every pattern online that shows and every book that shows.
So if you want to nymph fish, and only nymph fish, then a bead is your best bet. But what we're talking about are taking these fish at the surface. And I've been at this game for almost 54 years. I have never met a fly angler, ever, who didn't prefer to catch his fish on the dry fly. It's just fun. It's fun. The tug's a drug underneath. But everything in fly fishing is logical. Let me rephrase that. Nothing in fly fishing is illogical. That means every fly fishing problem has a logical solution. It's illogical for me to have a beaded zebra midge in my fly box. I can have more midges, less confusion. When I want to put that midge on the bottom, I just put a piece of lead on it. I need a piece of lead, heavier than a bead.
You just need to make sure what kind of midges you're talking about. Like when he said he caught a 20-inch trout on a 18 zebra midge. I have 18 zebra midges, no bead, but I've never thought of them as being emergers. Isn't an emerger a different pattern?
Huh? Pretty cool, huh? So the midge that you're fishing on underneath, if I put it up here, it's an emerger. The definition of a emerger is an aquatic insect that leaves the bottom of the river to swim to the surface.
But aren't there some midge patterns that they call emergers that aren't quite like the adult?
Yeah. You can concoct anything. I can't argue that point. I mean, it's a valid point.
Oh, I'm not trying to make any point. I'm just
No.
trying to figure out what kind of bug you're talking about here.
All right, so let me put it this way, okay? You saw what a midge pupa looks like, okay? Looks like a little black worm going up there, right? Okay, so let's just hold that for a second. Now, let's just take a regular mayfly nymph, okay? So this is a mayfly nymph, okay? It's on the bottom. This is a mayfly emerger, it's at the surface, okay? So I'm gonna come down here, and I'm gonna pick up the nymph, okay? And I'm gonna reach up here and grab the same mayfly emerger, okay? I'm gonna put them behind my back. I'm gonna take them back out and I'm gonna ask you, can you tell me which one's the emerger and which one's the nymph?
So it's just where you put them.
Yeah. So, back in the day, they were called floating nymphs. Today, they're called emergers. What visual difference do you see between a nymph and an emergent nymph, or emerger? No, there's no difference. They look the same. Then what is the difference? Well, if I hit that one, a bunch of blood and guts come out. That's the nymph. If I hit that one, there's a little butterfly inside. That must be the emerger. The difference is one's on the bottom and one's just under the surface. So when you apply that to midges, it's the same logic to midges. That pupa swimming to the surface, that's a midge pupa. Once it hits the surface, it's an emerger. And it looks like what? The midge pupa on the bottom. So you can take this midge pupa and fish it on the bottom and it'll look identical. See what I'm trying to say? Does that make sense? Now, what about these patterns out there that they have all kinds of fuzzy stuff on them? They call them emergers.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, I think we're going more towards that half in, half out emergers, where they're trying to get that
Right.
adult coming out and the pupa shuck underneath. They're trying to buy into
Right.
that.
You recommend those?
No, well, I don't. Yeah, I would say you need a variety of different things. A classic example is as illogical as it sounds. Some of these fish are pretty smart sometimes, and all you need to do is just change things. And that's all it takes sometimes. There's some nice flies out there. There's Sprout, Klinkheimer, where they're doing both. Those work really well. Now you can see where your fly is. So what we're looking at now is we're looking at a fly that's at the surface. It looks like this. But down here it looks like a midge. We have what we call stackers and different types that are going to give you half out of the water and half in the water. You know, and there's a variety of those. From that point of view, I recommend it, yeah. Size is more than anything else in fly fishing. So You catching fish, you're not catching fish. You're using a zebra midge, you're using a zebra midge. What's the difference? How come you can't catch any and you're catching them all? Size. Size. So science tells us this. What causes a trout to take a dry fly and a midge, an emerger is considered a dry fly. Go to any fly shop, where are all the emergers? With the dry flies. Well, why are they considered a dry fly if you can't see them? Well, no God-fearing dry fly fisherman would ever catch a fish on a nymph, therefore it's a dry fly. Well, why? Different sizes. What do you mean? Why is that important? Because science tells us this. What causes a trout to take a dry fly or an emerger is three things. It has to be triggered. It's a triggered behavior. On the bottom, it's a conditioned behavior or a learned behavior. They learn how to eat. Meaning they'll eat anything and it comes right to their nose. Food always comes to me. Open the mouth, it goes in. That's called a learned behavior. At the surface, it's called a triggered behavior. And scientists say there's three things that have to trigger a trout to take a dry fly. One is the impression the fly makes on the surface or just under the surface in terms of an emerger. Two, color. And three, size. If you're lacking, if you don't have all three of those things, you're not catching a trout. You have to have three things to trigger a trout. So the difference between you're catching lots and you're catching none is you're using a size 22 zebra midge and you're using a size 18. So when we say, and this is universal across fly fishing, is we can say, if we can say one thing, that size usually determines how successful you're going to be. So typically, when we're at a quandra of what to use, and they're not using this, try going down a size. Instead of fishing a blue-winged olive size 18, go to a blue-winged olive size 20. And you won't get those refusals. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you should load your box up with what? Midge emergers. Right. Or pupas. So the confusing thing to you is what is on the bottom, what's on the top. Well, they're the same. They're the same. What I'm trying to tell you is you don't need a bead. If you, yeah, you can reverse it. If you have a bead, you can't put it at the surface because that's illogical. It'll sink. Yeah. So lots of things like that in fly fishing. You know, or you shake your head at. You know, why do you sell these? You know, why do you sell these things?
How does it catch fish?
Yeah. Well, for the guys that like the nymph fish, they like the bead. So they'll have both beaded and unbeaded. You know, I just tend to, I can have more flies without a bead. I'm not telling you not to use a bead. I'm just saying with a non-beaded emerger, you can fish the surface and the bottom. You have multi-purpose fly. Yeah, you don't have that flexibility with a beaded fly.
Like as far as tandem fishing, you know, having maybe a surface one or a merger 6-8 inches below.
Yeah, that's a common strategy. So what we're talking about now is we're talking about using two flies. We're talking about putting together a dry fly midge like that and then having a merger underneath it. That's common. That's a common way of fly fishing, and I've been doing it for years. I don't do that anymore. You know, I'm recommending you fish one fly. When you do this right here, you're using both, prevents you from changing flies. When you have one fly, it's a lot easier to snip that fly off and tie another one on, and you're back at it. So here's where we're going with this: is you have a target. You see rising fish out there. You have a target. You're targeting those fish. You're not throwing your fly out there. You're targeting those. You want that fly to go right in front of them. So I want my fly to be right in front of you. How many times am I going to float that fly? You're not going to take it. What does that tell me? I need to switch flies. That's called working the progression. And it's easy to do in the winter because they can only be eating a midge. So it's not as difficult as I'm making it sound.
How do you keep track of something that's so tiny that you really can't see it?
You talking about the real one?
Yeah.
How do you track it?
How do you manage a fly when you can't see it? You cast it out
If it's me, I just go home and have a late breakfast. Yeah, like a size 30.
Yeah, or even 22.
Well, a size 30, I have a picture of, he sent me a picture of, he has this is the photograph he sent me. That's a dime. The midge is right here. And
So
he's-
isn't that a way though to kind of do what he's saying, is know where it is and manage it?
Mhm. Yeah, you just, it's a lot of it's just common sense, working it. You can, when you're in the wintertime, you can surface fish for midges or you can subsurface for midges. What I'm telling you right now, we're doing a lot of nymphing right now. This is winter, right now. We're nymphing for fish. And the water temperature's nice, and the days are a little longer. And we're catching a lot of fish. What are we catching them on though? Midges. Midges. So we're actually winter fishing right now.
When you're talking about the progression, would you progress size or color? Or
It's, everybody has their own little way of doing it. The progression, it's called the progression, if you're progressively working towards that one fly that will catch them. It's a fancy fly fishing term that we, it's just trial and error.
try something different?
Yeah.
When you say we're nymphing right now, we're fishing blind,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not looking for rising fish, we're just going into a piece of water that looks good, or looking for a hole.
Yeah,
and-
it's a nice day, it's 50 degrees, sun's out, water temperatures, I'm not gonna get cold, and you're just enjoying the day. And I'm nymphing. It's a logical thing to do. But in January, when there's, 6 feet of ice to get out in the river, and it's 20 degrees, and you wanna do that, no. I want to look for them. I want to find them. And it takes me to do that. It takes me looking for these looking for these fish to do that. A classic example is South Fork Boise River. I'll drive the South Fork Boise River, which is a great midge river. I'll just drive up and down the river, stop, get out, my binoculars, look, and all I need to do is see one head come up. And I'm there, put my waders on, and I'm at it. So I'm really looking for these type of scenarios on the river. But you can get out there and wade if you want to. I'm not saying don't get out there and wade. I'm just saying you get cold really quick and you're only fishing a 100-yard stretch. While you're fishing a 100-yard stretch, I just drove down 4 miles of road. You fished 100 yards, I actively looked at 4 miles of river. And then run around the corner and there they are. So it takes patience. It takes patience. Sometimes we're not fishing. Sometimes we didn't find them. And now you're just out having a nice day on the river and you're enjoying yourself, drinking coffee and eating lots of donuts. And just enjoying your day on the river. And hoping that maybe next time I go out, I'll find them. So basically, we get down to two approaches. Those that want to wait on the river and go at it, and those of us that just don't want to do that. So you can do either or, whatever fits your style of nymphing.
So you have your leader, your tippet, your fly. What are you using as weight on that fly for nymphing?
Just a little piece of lead. No closer than 12 inches to the fly. Yep. And if you leave a small enough, if you have a small enough piece of lead, you can actually really cast that. You start putting 2 pieces of lead on, and now you're just going to break your rod tip. Yeah. Any other questions?
In the video, the emergers, the worm-like
Mm-hmm.
edges, how big are those? How long were those?
It depends. It really depends. The Wahi River, I'll talk about that. In the Wahi River, he wants to know how big the midges are in the river. For the example, the Wahi River, and most of you know where that is, it's just on the Idaho-Oregon border, and it's considered the North American continent's greatest brown trout fishery. Well, it's also considered the greatest midge river that we have in the West. There's 28,000 aquatic insects per square meter. Y'all know what a square meter is? 28,000? I would venture to say 90% of those aquatic insects are midges. Well, they come in different sizes. Yeah. So I've actually seen midges in the Hawaii River, like you saw there. And what I saw in the river looked exactly like that. See,
Yeah, those look like they were an inch long.
yeah, and these little black rubber things are coming in, the fish are eating them. and I'm catching fish on them. Well, you come back the next day and now they're eating a size 18. And you come back a week later and you eat size 20. So would you catch them on size 20? You go, so now I've got size 20 as I get up there. Now they're not taking size 20. Why? Because another brood has come up and they're size 30. You come back a week later with 30s, and now they're eating 18s again. So it's not 28,000 of the same midge. There's different species, hundreds of species that are all mixed in.
I have a follow-up question, kind of like the gentleman in the front row asked. I don't see nearly as good as I used to. And we're fishing with 18s to 22s in the film. How do you fish it? Because that trout's only going to take that for microseconds.
But you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
And so,
You'd be surprised. There's different techniques and way to do that. It's a good question. You know, how do I fish a size 22 in the film? I can't even see it.
Yeah.
Well, I get this question almost daily,
Well,
and it's a good question.
I've been fishing for 50 years and I still ask the question.
Well, if you ever seen Star Wars, Luke used the Force. So it's a great question. I always give the same answer. You know, it's. I think it's there. I think it's there. I think it's there. I think if I see a fish, because you'll always see the fish moving on the water. I just move the rod a little bit, just maybe 3 inches, and that's all I need. They have new products out there. One's called a Slinky. Are you familiar with that? Y'all know what a Slinky is, right? What a Slinky is, it's just this little coil. And they make them. And you can take a colored monofilament and you heat it up and you tape it onto a nail, a big 16-penny nail like that. And then you tape it up and you put it in boiling water for a period of time. You take it out and you put it in your freezer for 24 hours. When you're all done, you have this little Slinky. So what guys are doing is they're putting Slinkies on there, right? And as they throw out their midges, they watch that Slinky. If that Slinky starts to stretch, they have a fish. So what I was trying to say, there's different techniques there. I highly recommend the Slinky. Some guys are using strike indicators, which is your typical thing. Really small strike indicators really work really well. I know a guy that puts on a big stonefly and drops 2. So we have ways doing it. And then there's, as far as you threading a size 22, we have needle threaders, or threaders specifically for midges. The wire's about that long, and you can just go right through there and thread your midge. So we really come up with some really answers. I like the Slinky the best.
Well, I think something that would be helpful would be a high visibility leader. or
Yeah,
tippet.
we call those called ciders. We have ciders. They're bright orange, and you can float those ciders, and they'll move. There's a lot of techniques. I'm the Luke Skywalker guy. I just lift my rod up and do it that way. But what you will see though is you'll see the activity on the water. You're actively seeing fish rising, and every time they take an emerger, they break the water. So if I think I've got a straight line, and as my fly's drifting through there, I think it's right about there, and I see a rise where I think I'm just going to give it a pull, just a little pull. What I'm trying to do is not move the fly. I'm trying to move the fly a little bit so that it'll drift through. And typically I don't even get that far. I'm stopped, and now I have the fish, and the fish will set the hook. You don't have to do that. Just a little, nope. Or sometimes I'll do a movement. My body will move just enough to see if that rod tips go down. Yeah, but the Slinky is great. I've yet to meet an angler that didn't like the Slinky, and it's designed for this kind of stuff. And soft tackles. It's designed specifically for this type of fishing. A lot of the older guys are using strike indicators, and they're just putting a strike indicator on, putting a couple, and they're just watching that go through. Now they have at least a sight online where the midges are. It's the same thing on the lakes, because we fish for midges on lakes, and we use a strike indicator, and we set 2 or 3 midges on it. We cast it way out there, straighten line up, and we slowly bring it in, watching that strike indicator. It's the same type of technique. So we have these techniques that you can use. But typically, though, on our mountain rivers, the action's really fast. I mean, you got moving water, and the fish are going, it's really fast. And if you miss it, they're not spitting it out. You know, you'll go along like this, and all of a sudden your line will tighten up. It's not like lakes where it just lays, your line lays there in the water. You're not casting out, you've got a lot of fish in there. And that's what I'm looking for. And it's really fast-paced, quick, fun fishing. It's just one fish after the other. And oftentimes what will happen too is for example, when I go to the Wahi River or I go to the South Fork of the Boise River, I always bring a bunch of firewood with me because it's cold. And if I find a really good spot and I'm catching fish, all of a sudden I'm not catching any fish anymore, I'll go back to the truck and start a fire. And then I'll go back 20 minutes later and I'll catch 4 or 5 more, and then all of a sudden it'll slow down, and I'll go back to the fire and throw another stick or 2 on it, like that, same spot. So eventually these fish will lay down, but they're feeding fish. And one thing you can't do to a feeding fish is what? You can't scare it. You can't scare a feeding fish.
How much tippet will you use, Mike?
I'm using 6X tippet, and I'm using probably about 10 feet. Leader's 10 feet,
Right.
including the tippet. So 10 feet, 11 feet, right in there. That's a hard answer because some anglers will go 16 feet, and they're comfortable with that. You're new to angling, 10 feet. For me, I like that 12 feet. So it's kind of an answer that works really for your skill level. I think a minimum of 10 feet.
That's the leader, not the.
That's the leader and tippet together.
Leader and tippet.
Leader and tippet together. So let's take a scenario now. I don't see any fish rising, and I want to fish. I don't want to drive all over the place. I'm here to fish. I'm going to wait out there, and I'm going to nymph fish. You're using beaded nymph. You can use beaded midges, zebra midges. We have tons of midges here, different colors. They're silver, red, green. They're size 26s down to size 16s. And you just have a combination. It's better to err on being too big on the bottom because that's a conditioned behavior. So you can get by with a bigger fly on the bottom than you can on the surface. We're trying to match exactly what the fish is eating on the surface. Everything. So you can go wade right out there, and you can, and a lot of guys and anglers will do that because they get the best of catching whitefish while they're at it. Yeah, whitefish are winter spawners. So where you find whitefish, you're going to find trout. Yeah. So you can go right out there and do it, and enjoy every second of it. There's nothing wrong with that. But the excitement is finding them on the surface. So I watched a video here a year or so ago about a guy. He actually posted this video, and he's at the Boise River. And I've been to the Boise River twice, and I haven't seen a single fish rising anywhere. And he posted this video, and you see these fish just going. What's this? I didn't see. Where is that? And I watched it again and again, and then I recognized the place. Sure enough, I drove down there, and what are the fish doing? Where am I going with this? Typically, when you find rising fish, well, those fish were rising right there 1,000 years ago. And you go back next year, and they're rising there. So one winter, I'm walking the greenbelt, and I'm about a 300-yard stretch, and I have my fly rod in hand. I'm walking the greenbelt, and I don't see a single fish rising for 300 yards. I go around the corner, and there they are. There's 20 of them. I go in there and catch them all. And then I walk on down another 500 yards, and I don't see a single fish rising. 25 years later, I'm walking down the greenbelt, about 300 yards, I can't see a single fish rising. I go around the bend, and there they are. There's 20 fish feeding. I go catch them all, and then I walk another 500 yards, and I don't see a single fish rising. Where am I going with this? When you find this, you're going to find it in 25 years. They're still going to be there. It's that easy. And we have sections of the Boise River for you guys that are like that all winter. You just got to find them and know where to go and log those in your memory. They're there. And fishing becomes very easy at that point. So what we're talking about basically is we're talking about something that's very hard to do because of the physical conditions we're in. I don't like to get my feet wet. You do. I got all this bulk, my hands are cold. So we have these hard conditions, but we're doing something that's really, really relatively easy to do. You shouldn't be on the river right now nymphing, unless it's with a midge, or at least a size 18. Pheasant tail or whatever. At least get your nymphs down to the size that the nymphs are in the river. But when I go down there, I'm nymphing predominantly midges. If fishing slow, I'll change colors and different sizes and go from there. So what we know about nymphing, as a general rule, we know that fish are either hungry or they're not. We know that fish are either feeding or they're not. What that means is you've been down the river for 3 hours. I show up and I go, dude, how's the fish? He goes, man, I've been here for 3 hours. I can't buy a fish. You leave. I walk out there and I start catching fish after fish. Well, for 3 hours they weren't hungry. When I got there, they all of a sudden want to be hungry. That's it. We don't know anything more than that. Science can't tell us anything more than that. However, we know that some nymphs work better than others. Some flies work better than others. Everybody has their favorite fly they use. But it's a conditioned behavior. As long as the fish are hungry and I put a stick in front of it, it should take it. So where you are in that scale, a fish can be in one spot all day and not see a single nymph. All day. Why? Because there's no nymphs. Why? Because they're all underwater hiding. They don't float around. So it'd be all, what's this fish doing? He's waiting on the dinner bell. What's the dinner bell? Where you have thousands of fish, now, thousands of flies all in the water column. And he's going to go up there and they're going to pig out. Just gorge. You cannot scare that fish. So if I'm in a dark room and I'm on my laptop and then Richard sneaks up behind me and he goes, boo! I'm going to jump up, I'm going to reach over, find something, I'm going to throw it at Richard. And then I'm going to go what? Right back to my laptop. It's the same thing with feeding trout. And that fish is going, whoop! And then what's that fish going to do?
Go back up and eat.
Come back up here. Why? Because it can't be safe and feed at the same time. It can only do one thing at a time, it's feeding. So I've never scared a feeding trout. I've scared thousands of trout, but not a feeding trout. So what does that mean to you? It means you can get real close, but also you can scare them where you need to go to the fire and warm up. Because what are those fish going to do in about 10 minutes? Get right back up eating. So how long do they feed? As long as there's midges on the water. So we get back to full circle to where we first started. In the wintertime, trout are governed by the sun. Well, they're governed by the sun anyway. Certainly, it becomes a little more easier for us. That's not true in every case. There's exceptions to every rule, but we really want to be there when that sun's out. So I like that 11 to 2 o'clock span. That's where I go hunting. That's where I'm looking for fish to catch. And if I'm at a local river, like we have the Boise River, one of our top urban fisheries in the United States, if I'm down on the Boise River on a Saturday, it's a fun morning for me. Find a donut shop and go at it.
Is there any hazard to the fish when you release them in the winter as opposed to like summertime? I mean,
I think it's the same. We need to handle our fish very quickly. If we have nets and we want to take a picture of our fish, let's resuscitate the fish first. And we can do that. We can resuscitate a fish very easily by covering its eyes. So I can have this fish underwater like this. I don't even have to touch. It'll just lay in my hand. So I can net this fish. I can take the fly out of its mouth. I can put him underwater. He'll swim. He won't swim off. He can't swim off, and I don't even have to hold him. It's called fish whispering, and then we can just take the fish and pick it up, and it's going to lay right in our hands. You shot at that. And then we put the fish back in the water and whisper it some more. Like this. It's like a mule. They have blinders. Why do mules have blinders? So they don't get scared. So we just hold that fish right there. And then what do we do? Raise your hands and just sit there. Just sit there and life with it. The answer is we should resuscitate a fish before we. You'll find a much more cooperative fish than trying to hold this thing like this. So, I think it works better, Richard. I think it works better if we just go one fly at a time. It gives you more. It's just more impetus to change flies when it's not working. I mean, how many times am I going to put that? There's 18 fish right there. How many times am I going to put that fly, run that fly through there? I want to try something else. They've seen that 18 times. I'll quickly go on and run another one through, until I find what they're hitting. We try this. We try that. That's called working the progression. Successful anglers work the progression. What works better than that? Come in here. Yeah, they're taking size 18 RBs. Everybody does it. That's what they're eating. And then you got your RB. But you have to, that's what successful anglers do, is we work that progression. We have a problem, and we can solve it logically. Everything in fly fishing is logical. It means every fly fishing problem has a logical solution. Having the right flies to make these logical solutions is called working the progression or trial and error. If we are tying 2 flies like that, it limits us. I don't want to tie 2 more flies around. That sort of thing. The second thing, Richard, is it's better to drift a dry fly without trailing something. So if I want to cast say a Griffith net, and I do, I want that Griffith net not to be weighted by something dragging it through. And we have quite a few flies that will float on the surface, half in, half out. That's an emerger. It's called a hatcher. There's 2 types of emergers. There's a nymphal emerger. There's a nymphal emerger. It looks like the nymph. And a hatcher, which is half in, half out. It's hatching. So you should have both those emergers in your fly box. The 3 big rivers we have. The Waihe River, and then we'll close this evening, or at least open it up to questions. I want to talk a little bit about the Waihe River. Everything I spoke to you tonight about does not apply to the Waihe River. The Waihe River is an enigma. You're gonna be challenged this time of year there. It's not as easy as they make it sound here. What we see on the Waihe River, we don't see on other rivers, meaning the Waihe River has a minimum flow right now of 30 cubic feet. What does that mean? That means we have a sets of pools now. And what that means to the trout is trout cease to become river trout and become lake trout. They're cruising. So you can't drift your fly through them. They're moving, they're cruising. There's very little current. And these fish right now are on the spawn. So when that's over, you're just going to have these little pools. So it's quite a challenge to go up there and midge fish. Where I am fishing on the Waihe River is I'm looking for those areas where those water's coming into the pools, because we have fish will move there. So if you're fishing the Waihe River, you are fishing midges, and you are trying to look for those spots and those pools where the river's going right through. Now, there's big, giant pools on the Waihe River, and you'll see bloop, 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 bloop. What I'm trying to say is you see that bloop? Well, where's that fish? It could be going this way, that way, this way, or this way. In a river, you see a bloop, where's the fish? Right there. So we have a tendency to just take tie on a couple midges, emergers, and then put a strike indicator. Just do the best you can. And let that wind or whatever move that through. Unless you see grouped rises. And it's a tough nut to crack. The Boise River in town I'm always looking for rising fish there. You have to find them. And when you find them, you come back tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. They'll be there all the time. You come there on Thursday and they're not there. Well, come on Friday, they'll be there. They're not there on Friday, come on Saturday, there they are. So you'll find where these places are. And the only way you can find is to get out and look for them. Hence the binoculars. So I can't,
The river flows are pretty much right now what they're gonna be for
pretty much,
the rest until
Yeah.
they start irrigating.
yeah. Anytime you see water moving that what we call tails out, that's gonna be a good area for fish riding. Bicycles. Get a pair of binoculars, get on your bicycle and start looking. And just chart where you're seeing rising fish. And then now you know where to go. You can, Barber Park's a good place. Certainly the Highway 21 bridge is that's probably one of the top winter fisheries on the river, is that Highway 21 bridge from Barber Dam to the New York Canal diversion. It's really good. Eagle Island has little pockets everywhere on that river. The tip of the island is really good where the footbridge goes over. I think probably the number one nymphing river that I know of that's uncomplicated is the Boise River. You find fish on there. It's almost a zebra midge. So I try to take you through this complicated maze because it can be complicated. It can be as simple as having a size 20 zebra midge. It's that simple. And you can sink that size 20 zebra midge. So you've hunted, can't find him, now you can go nymph him before you go home. Yeah. Okay, and then the South Fork, noon to 3. That's the magic hour, noon to 3. So I want to leave Boise probably around 11:30. If I want to stop to get breakfast, 6:30 in the morning. So I want to get there around noon. If I just want to spend the day on the river, doesn't matter when you get there. I've been there, as earliest I've been on the river is 9 a.m. and seen rising fish there. So, but that usually that noon to 3 is the magic hour. If you have a canyon in there, you got to deal with You know, on the South Fork,
Just below the dam, and you drive
yeah,
you just drive along and stop
Yeah.
and glass them
yeah, up and down the river
4, 5, 6 miles.
till your patient wears down, and then you're going to wait out there and get cold. I'm actively really hunting fish. That's the key word here. You have to hunt. You go deer hunting. What do? You hunt deer, right? Right. When you can't find deer, you don't get any deer, right? And then you start target shooting, right? Well, it's the same concept here. I'm hunting fish. I'm hunting rising fish. And sometimes there aren't any. And I didn't come home with my deer. It's the same thing. It's the same concept here. See, when I find rising, this is what you need to burn in your brain. When you find rising fish, you're going to catch them all. You know, that's what that's what's key here. Now, if you're impatient, okay, and you can't do that, then wait out there. You know, give yourself, okay, an hour. I'm going to hunt for an hour, okay? Then go. You know, and the next time you can stretch it. Well, next time I'm going to go an hour and a half. You know, you can work on this. It takes a lot. I mean, you've just driven an hour and a half, and you want to fish, and you can't because you got to hunt these things. It takes some discipline, and it's a different style of fishing. It's just one style of fishing. But you certainly can go out there and wade out there. I've done it many times. And there's many times I don't want to hunt. I just want to go out there and fish. So when we want to go out there and fish, okay, a good rule of thumb is, and then I'll open it up to questions here. When we have a situation where the river may compress like this, it's going in this direction, and it opens up. What's going to happen here is this river is going to compress.
And we're nymphing?
Where do we want to nymph? We want to nymph always at the head, right here. That's where we want to be nymphing. Because the fish will always push up to the very top of a run, especially on the South Fork Boise River. Right there at the top of the run. And then the farther down you go, the less you're going to catch. So the trout are right in here, and the whitefish are all down here. So if you come to this scenario here and you say, there's this nice run, I'm going to go all the way to the top of the run, and you catch a fish right here, you're done. You scared all these fish in here. Now you got to go to the truck and sit and drink coffee. Because this fish is not feeding. That means you scared him and all the other fish in there. So give it sometimes I'll catch one right here, and then I'll just go down here, catch some whitefish. 15 minutes later, I'll come back up. You can find these places all up and down the South Fork of Boise River. So that's what I like to do. I'll hit right at the top. That's where the trout are.